Welcome back to the program once again. If you're just joining us, this is Bottomline Africa, right here on KTN News. Let me reintroduce our guest once again. We have Jarvis Bigambo, who is a change management consultant and a political analyst. We have David Ole Sankok, who is a nominated member of parliament, as well as Onyango Olo, who is the speaker of the Kisumu County Assembly. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
So let me just start with you, Jarvis. We all know that civil disobedience has played a critical role in many of the social reforms. We've seen demonstrations in the north of Africa, that is in Egypt, Morocco, Algeria. We've seen the same case in Kenya during the second liberation. And our focus today is the two demonstrations, one in Kenya against the IEBC and the other in Uganda. Will you consider this as civil disobedience?
Well, of course, we have witnessed today in Kenya and in Uganda an expression of the people's will, and also coming clear that they have a conscience that they are trying to safeguard, and that conscience is clashing with the provisions of the current pieces of legislation. When you look at the body or the context of social disobedience, then you realize that it is a nagging within the individual who sticks to his or her conscience and elects to face off with the law, and to that great extent with, say, government, because they are going to face off, or they get to face off with the system of force. That's the police of government. And all over the history of the world, it has been demonstrated that the place of civil disobedience in occasioning change in society cannot be undermined. For example, when you look at how it happened in the former years in the US, the Black Panther movement, the anti-war movement, we have had the Bata movement, the Occupy Wall Street, etc., and all that.
Yes.
You realize that the very nature of civil disobedience has a very powerful trajectory that always leads to change or reform within society. It's always powerful because it is, by its nature, non-violent. However, when you put into context the situation in the Ugandan parliament, then the violence...
That ceases to be civil disobedience.
Exactly.
Now, allow me to engage Honorable Sankok here, who is a nominated member of parliament. Now, Mheshimiwa, I'm sure you've been following this development both in Kenya and Uganda. From your own point of view, will you consider this a civil disobedience? And do you think the demonstrations, in particular the one in Kenya against IEBC, of course being perpetrated by NASA, do you think it's going to be fruitful?
Of course, the demonstration led by NASA will not be fruitful at all, because it is egocentric. It's led by a selfish guy who have been known throughout and never to consider any defeat. And my brother, I would like to take you back a bit and educate you about Kenyans. Kenyans are very peaceful people. Kenya is the only country in Africa that have not faced major coup, and it is a country that we can say it is the epitome of democracy in Africa, because we have had 4 different presidents, head of states, whom have received or whom have handed power out of the outcome of the election, and it has been a democratic process. We have 2 heads of state who are retired at home, who handed over power voluntarily once the electoral process was finished and they were voted out of office. But then there have been a perennial loser who have been on record, especially when we go back to 1982. It was mentioned in the coup of 1982. We also go back to 2007, where there were a lot of bloodshed in Kenya, courtesy of the same NASA principal, who won unorthodox means of ascending to power.
Honorable Sankok, before I cross over to Olo, I'm sure a lot of NASA supporters or those who protested today will disagree with you. Did you think it's prudent for the police or the anti-riot police officers to give these individuals some chance to, protest peacefully?
You know, we have to see, we have to see which type of, and that is why I was bringing you from the history part of it,
Yes.
that it was a coup first. And then later on, it was a kind of mass action that led to bloodshed in 2007. And now, it is another kind of mass action. And, you know, there is, the Constitution allow everybody the right to demonstrate, the right to picket. But it is the same Constitution that also protect independent office holders from being ejected. And actually, it is on record. The NASA principal said, we are going to inject them out of their offices. I don't know in which part of the Constitution that the word injecting people out of office, it is enshrined. And again, our police, yes, they are also human beings. And I can assure you, they were willing to be very gentle, and they were willing even to use maybe tear gas only and maybe rubber bullets only, but only on those also who were carrying rubber stones. But those guys were carrying real stones, and these stones can kill. No one is allowed to kill.
Let me bring on Mr. Onyangolo into this discussion. I believe you can hear me now. And Honorable Sankok there clearly has said that the demonstrations today, we're focusing on NASA this time round, are meant to change the electoral body, and it's not meant to fight any kind of injustice. Do you agree with him?
First, it's unfortunate that I did not hear much of his earlier submissions. But taking it from where I've heard it, let me put it this way. First, he has misrepresented very fundamental points in the demonstration or the picketing which the NASA fraternity conducted today. At no given point in time did the NASA leadership state that they were going to evict anyone, and I mean anyone from office, least of all constitutional office holders. The purpose and the very reason for which this picketing and demonstration was called was to put pressure so that the persons whose names have been communicated by NASA, so that the persons in whom we have no confidence to conduct these elections would step aside. So let him get his facts right. I suppose first he wanted to mean eject. There was no such a thing in the NASA grounds upon which the demonstrations were being sought. Secondly, if I would go a little down, let me put it this way, that this, as Bwana has put it, this movement that you see now running across Africa, it came in the 60s when we were fighting for independence, and you could see Black Africa almost rallying to a man agitating for independence. Then came the age of dictatorship, the age of single-partyism. Then towards the 90s, again, the agitation for multipartyism came in. Of course, with mixed level of success. And to date, as we are talking, and you can see the wind of change is blowing across Africa.
So definitely you're considering today's demonstration as a civil disobedience. Now, Bigambo, this is where I want to bring you in, and one of the key figures or factors with regards to civil disobedience, that it must be peaceful and non-violent. Are we seeing the same situation with Kenya's case as well as that in Uganda?
When you look at the very nature of civil disobedience, there are very many other components that must be considered. One, there is the aspect of consciousness. Then there is the aspect of consolidation. And there is also the other aspect of confrontation. All these aspects are the character of civil disobedience. The situation in Uganda, what has happened just in Parliament today, may not in itself just qualify for civil disobedience. However, what led to what happened to Parliament today could then constitute part of that which we may refer to as civil disobedience. Because in the run-up to the parliamentary happenings today, we've had members of that August House being arrested for voicing out against the proposed removal of the age limit on the presidential term in that country. And when you come to here in Kenya, you realize that there is the voicing by a section of society led by their political leaders and other societal leaders, to speak out on various issues of good governance that they think are very important in the preservation of the nation. Now, when you look...
So I would like to hear your observation towards the Kenyan scenario first.
Yes. Now, when you look here in Kenya, then you realize that by its nature, the preservation of a nation through the issues of civil disobedience must be fostered by the preservation of various liberties. The NASA movement, for example, have cited various constitutional provisions. There has been the Article 36 and Article 37, the issues of association, freedom of association, picketing, etc., which also is tethered to Article 20 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Now, they are anchoring their strength on a law. What we need to take note of here is that even as a quest or a push for civil disobedience is embraced in Kenya or in any society, it's always important to realize that other members of society who could be holding views that are distinct from such also need to be factored in, and that's where the issue of property also comes in.
So do you consider today's demonstration by the opposition NASA as civil disobedience?
It is, to some extent, an act of civil disobedience.
Yes.
Because they are a set of demands, and the reinvigoration or the reengineering of social consciousness within the populace to come and demand certain kind of reforms towards a certain desired kind of change.
Allow me to cross over to Onyango Olo for now. And Mr. Olo, there's a viewer here at Kenneth Tobuko who says on Twitter that no leaders of civil disobedience use the desperate masses to ascend to power and neglect them for their own benefit. This is a viewer who seems to be in agreement with the Honorable Sankok.
I do not know which leader he could be referring to who has used the masses to ascend into power and forgotten the masses. As far as I know, and as far as the history of this country is concerned, the leadership of NASA has been pushing for civil disobedience so that it can take the reins of governance to ensure that we have got effective, good leadership that caters for all. At no given time has Raila Odinga been at the citadel of power in this country. So could that viewer of ours refresh his thinking or rephrase his question?
Now, Honorable Sankok,
yes,
let me cross over to you once again. And we've seen the demonstrations today by NASA supporters. Most observers will say it was largely peaceful. So the reaction by the security officers, the anti-riot police, they had, dispersed them using tear gas. So do you think that was warranted in the first place?
My brother, what do you mean by saying civil? Because for me, it was not civil disobedience. It was actually evil, because when people remove their own clothes, when they were carrying stones, when they walk in the street naked, and when they barricade roads, every Kenyan have a right. Our ambulances have a right to rush to hospitals so that the patients that they are carrying can be treated in the right time. My brother, I really believe what the viewer had described as somebody using masses to ascend to power. Yes, it is true, because we know a particular person who used a bridge of dead bodies in 2007 to ascend to that Nusumkate, Nusumkeka kind of arrangement. And it speaks for itself, because there was a court ruling. And if we really respect the law, they went to court. We didn't, as Jubilee, go to court. They went to court. They were given a ruling. And the ruling had two parts. Part one, that the election was nullified. The election was null and void. The second part was that IBC be ready to conduct another election within 60 days. Now they chose to take the part that is favorable to them, that is the part of the election was nullified, but not the part that IBC, nobody was found culpable. You can go and get ready for an election within 60 days. Now they are telling us they don't want an election without reform. That was not part of the ruling of the Supreme Court.
Honorable Sankok, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty about IEBC and the back and forth at the anniversary towers. Now, Mr. Olo, you've heard Honorable Sankok's comment there. Do you agree with him that NASA supporters henceforth should conduct their protest in an orderly manner?
In the first most, it is unfortunate that Honorable Sankok seemed not to understand what civil disobedience itself is. Why do I say this? First and foremost, you see, we had stated the very reason for which we wanted to demonstrate. Our people were on the streets demonstrating peacefully to put pressure into IEBC to take the necessary measures we call. Then he comes here and misleads our viewers that the Supreme Court gave a two-dimensional ruling, and which he interprets in its own way that it meant elections being held within 60 days. And he leaves it at that. That is not true. The Supreme Court did direct that elections be conducted within 60 days and that those elections have to be transparent, fair, and credible. And the Honorable Chief Justice came out very clearly that should you not make it credible, transparent, and verifiable, then we will not hesitate to crash or nullify those elections again. So could we be of some help to Honorable Sankok so that he understands that judgment properly first before he spews out untruths?
Clearly, you have different opinions there. Honorable Sankok, you're going to react to him shortly.
Just let me make a comment.
Very
briefly. The problem with this Honorable Law, with a lot of kakakaka and a lot of English.
Please address the issue first.
How can he educate me? And I listened to the Supreme Court ruling, and I know what the Supreme Court ruling was all about. It was that the IBC should go and prepare an election within 60 days. I didn't hear the IBC directing Raila Odinga to go and remove some official from IBC so that the election can be credible. No.
Clearly, you have a different opinion with regards to civil disobedience and specifically with NASA's demonstrations. Now, this is where I want to bring Javas Bigambo once again. We've seen demonstrations in countries like Togo. We've seen it in northern part of Africa, that is in Egypt. It was referred to as the Arab Spring. And now it's happening in Kenya, partly. As much as Honorable Sankok and Olo might disagree, we're seeing demonstrations happening in Uganda. So do you think Africans have finally risen up and they know their rights, that they're supposed to protest when they're in disagreement with the government in place or any kind of institution?
Yusuf, Africans have always known the law. Africans have always known their rights. And even when you trace the very history of civil disobedience, when you go back even to the struggle for civil rights in the United States of America, it is black Americans who stood up and pushed for the liberation and for the issues that they wanted reformed. It is the black Africans who rose. It was not the whites who did it. So Africans have always understood the law. They know where they stand. It's only that at times, by force of intimidation, at times by the state, that people go slow, or at times by way of that intimidation, they fear to rise. But when a people most of the time rise, the occasion change. In Kenya here, you realize that the struggle even for multi-party democracy took the dimension of civil disobedience, and that occasioned the change that we witnessed. Civil disobedience, by its character, also propels political change in society and even constitutional change. The push for the new constitution in Kenya is itself a culmination of the efforts and the struggles and the determination, the diligence of citizens. You know, the term civil here refers to a people coming together or rising with a particular intent and drive to lead to a particular goal. So Africans and across the continent, it has been demonstrated that people can rise and pursue that which they seek.
Well said. Well said. Honorable Olo, let's now contextualize this conversation and let's focus on NASA's protest here in Kenya, of course. And as Bigambo's rightly put it, you know, when it comes to social disobedience, it normally brings about changes. Do you think with NASA's demos that we are seeing, do you expect any sort of changes in the IEBC?
Definitely. And I am pleased that you are now contextualizing this thing and putting it in the correct perspective. Let us not be talking of Raila Odinga let us be talking of NASA, a movement or a coalition of parties that are now agitating for good governance in matters electioneering, to ensure that not only do we produce leaders by whatever means, but that we produce leaders through credible, verifiable, and transparent means, as was dictated by our courts. So, yes, I can assure you that this civil disobedience will have to produce changes. And as my brother Bigambo has put it there, not everyone would originally join the civil disobedience. Even in America, the black Americans started it, but now everybody, as will certainly happen in our country, as has happened during the agitation for multipartyism, the very people who are opposing the civil disobedience would be the first people in queue to enjoy the fruits that it would have brought to our country. And we must not tire
now,
of pushing.
Honorable Lord, there's a meeting that has been convened by IEBC tomorrow. I believe they've talked to both NASA and Jubilee stakeholders. You're part of NASA, so do we expect to see NASA officials attend that meeting?
We have received the invitation this afternoon, and as the NASA coalitions, and that's why I was trying to assist our brother there to forget about Raila Odinga and see the bigger picture. Consultations are underway even as we are in the studio here, and very soon indeed a position will be taken as to whether we are attending. The only injunction that may restrain us from attending is that we want to have a clear agenda. We wanted to have a meeting that is configured to attaining certain objectives. We don't want to attend a meeting for the sake of PR. So if IEBC is clear on the agenda, the meeting is structured, certain and specific objectives are achievable, then certainly NASA would be attending. But as we are talking, consultations are underway as to whether to attend or not, based on the invitation we received.
Honorable Sankok, NASA is yet to make it official whether they're going to attend tomorrow's meeting with IEBC. What is the stand of Jubilee? And moving forward, what do you think the stand by NASA means for the electoral body?
Jubilee throughout have been always open for consultation. And we believe in the rule of law. And as my brother-in-law have put it, that we have to think of a bigger picture as NASA. But NASA have a leader, and the leader is on record having never accepted any defeat. He has been defeated 4 times. He's going to be defeated the 5th time, and he have never accepted any defeat. But if you compare with the leader of Jubilee, who is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, he was defeated once in 2002. He accepted the defeat, and again, the court ruled against him this year in August, and he actually accepted the ruling of he respected the ruling of the court. He said he may not agree with the ruling of the Supreme Court, but he will respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. So the problem we have is that we really don't have that what we call civil disobedience. Because when you add the word civil, I went once to The Hague, and when we wanted to picket about the ICC cases, the Kenyan ICC cases, we were told there is a specific location for picketing so that we don't disturb the normal flow of traffic, the normal businesses of other people. We may not be party to our picketing, or they are not actually the recipient of our complaints. You know, business people are not the recipient of our complaint. Somebody moving from Mombasa to Uganda is not a recipient of our complaint. And when we block him from his daily businesses, then we are picketing to the wrong person. So we are told in The Hague that go and picket in a specific location. Now, in Kenya, if picketing means abusing the head of state to the extent of even involving her mother, that her mother is a dog, if picketing means...
But I'm glad, Honorable Sankok, that we're in agreement that everyone has the right to demonstrate in Kenya, right?
The right to demonstrate, as far as your right to demonstrate does not infringe into other people's right. What we saw today, you know, when you walk naked in the street, you are infringing into what we call parental control. You people engage every now and then when you have some bad movies in these TVs of yours. So which parental control were you engaging on the streets, and you don't know who is in the kind of...
Okay,
now again, they were carrying stones. You play again that video. They were carrying very huge stones. These stones can kill, you know, and they were blocking roads. That is not civil. It is not. It's evil. It's evil.
Clearly, you have your stand on that demonstration by NASA. Javas, before I come to you, Honorable, although there's a tweet here from Mukhise Kitui, who said that there's need for both, you know, President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA's presidential candidate Raila Odinga to rise above party politics, because clearly the country, people don't know whether we're going to even to participate in that October 26th election. So moving forward, do you think both President Uhuru and NASA's presidential candidate should put their party politics aside for the sake of the country and move forward?
You know very well that I have worked for the president, and I am now working for the prime minister. And I would tell you, former prime minister, whichever way it pleases you, I would tell you that the two gentlemen, if they put aside those interests and looked at the country, because we are at a crossroad, it would be to the interest of everyone. Unfortunately, as you could see, the bile being poured out here, the Jubilee fraternity, while accepting the decision of the Supreme Court, which the president did say that he accepts, he went forward to give an injunction that was simply out of place, that should he win the elections, it was coming for the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court. That is not to say that you have accepted it in good faith. What am I talking to my brother and our viewers? In 1972, Amin ascended to power in Uganda, a beloved man at that time, and he released Benedicto Kiwanuka, whom he went forward to appoint as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Uganda. But when he wanted Benedicto Kiwanuka to abdicate the rule of law and start doing things his way, Benedicto Kiwanuka refused. And he killed Benedicto Kiwanuka after warning the judiciary. Could we be seeing the repeat when the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court are put under pressure and told, we are coming for you, forcing him to say that we are ready to pay the ultimate price? Dictators are never born. Dictators are made by people who surround them, like the honorable member here. You can see the bile being poured. If these are the people now surrounding the president, then who want our country?
Well said, Nyangolo. I think that will serve as your final comment. Now, Jaffas, very briefly, your final comment?
Well, all free people in this country, wherever they dwell, must not be beleaguered by the comforts of within the sanctuary of bigotry. Because when we are stuck within the entrapment of bigotry, then the issues of tribal inclination and myopic perspectives to issues that are critical to the nation then get to encumber us. It is important that moving forward and to progress this country, that His Excellency the President and His Excellency Raila Odinga get to lead their troops to a discussion without all this baggage that they seem to be carrying, and see how we can resolve the kind of impasse that we have right now and get to have an election that takes this country forward. We must not be trapped in this kind of quagmire longer.
Well said, Javas. Honorable Sankok, your final comment?
Yes, the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, have taken this country democratic space into a new level. Because it is the first time in the history of the world that a sitting president, who is sitting and is the commander of chief of all armed forces, requesting the opposition to come and go for an election, so that if he is elected, he continues. If he is not elected, then he vacates office. It is the first time in the history that the sitting president, is the one insisting that we want an election. Secondly, he will be the first president in Africa, and I think the fourth in the whole world, for his election to be nullified, and because he respects the rule of law, because he does not want bloodshed, because he believes in a peaceful Kenya, he accepts and respects the Supreme Court decision. And only a few minutes after the decision of the Supreme Court, he was out there campaigning so that he prepared himself for an election. And while our competitors were so busy issuing threats and everything, and they are saying, we had threatened the Supreme Court.
Honorable Sankok, I think you've already made your point there.
Yes, thank you very much.
Many thanks for your input. That is Honorable David Ole Sankok, a nominated Member of Parliament. Thank you very much. Onyangolo is the Speaker of the Kisumu County Assembly, as well as Javas Bigambo is a political analyst. For now, let's take a look at the day's proverb. Seems that proverb chose to delay itself. Anyway, it's time for Bottom Line tonight. Now, the case for civil disobedience. The world over, huge political and social milestones have been achieved through organized push for change through non-violent means. We can go on and on about a recent political history, ranging from the push for constitutional reforms, as is being witnessed in Togo. Such similar pushes gave birth to the so-called Second Liberation in Kenya, giving South Africa a new lease of life, ending decades of apartheid, and also credited for regime changes as seen in the Arab Spring across Northern Africa. Now, to get a better appreciation of the role of civil disobedience, we might want to revisit the push for black emancipation in the 1800s, more specifically, and 1849, when an essay by American transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau titled Civil Disobedience. Now, characterized the United States government as unjust because of their support for slavery at the time. This awoke public consciousness over the dictates of law on segregation. The essay ended up as a basis that formed part of an anti-slavery and reform purpose. In short, I'm trying to build a case for lawful civil disobedience, as we have seen within this show. The theatrics of state excesses, as witnessed in Uganda today, cannot be tolerated in today's global order. Similarly, the Kenyan opposition, NASA, hit the streets demanding some reforms to the electoral process before the October repeat polls. President Uhuru and his deputy William Ruto have termed the demos as a fight in futility, saying elections will go on as planned. Either side have a right to express their opinion, but truth also be said. The right to civil disobedience is acceptable world over, with an unacceptable cost, and that is the bottom line tonight. Many thanks for watching. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. Remember, this program is aired every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. See you tomorrow, same place, same time. Bye-bye until then, and enjoy the rest of your night.